Hi all, welcome back to my channel. For those of you who are new, my name is Ronke and I love to talk about travel, career, and general living tips. If that sounds like your sort of thing, please make sure that you subscribe to my channel for more content. In today's video, I am talking all about timeshares and vacation clubs. So timeshares and vacation clubs are pretty similar, but they essentially are packages or memberships that you join to have access to certain properties or a specific property for vacation purposes. So timeshares in particular are called a timeshare because you essentially would kind of like buy into a condo, for example, and you would be one of maybe multiple people that are buying into this condo to have some level of ownership. And so the way that it works is that you are then able to book this destination for X amount of weeks, however many times a year. Or you can also, of course, probably book it for someone else that's, like a friend or family member or whatever. Whereas with the timeshares, what ends up happening is because you only have access to it at certain times, they also have what's called blackout dates, meaning dates that you cannot book it or dates where you would not be eligible to stay at the property. Vacation clubs are somewhat similar. Some of them are kind of timeshares, but there are also some vacation club options or kind of membership options where you would have a membership with a specific chain of a property. You could have a membership, let's say, with like a sandals in a particular location. And so you'd be able to stay at that property at a discounted rate, discounted being the operative word here. You'd be able to stay there at a discounted rate kind of whenever you want throughout the course of a year. And then you're supposed to get special perks and all this stuff with it. For some of these vacation clubs as well, it might not be tied to like one specific property. It might be just any property within the chain. So maybe like a sandals chain or a Hard Rock chain, or it might be just different properties, period. It might not even be a specific chain, just different properties that are somehow affiliated with the network of vacation clubs. So that was a lot. Now, in the past year, I personally have heard so much about vacation clubs and all these different things. And I've heard previously about timeshares, and to be honest, timeshares don't necessarily have the best reputation, but I've heard a lot more about these vacation clubs and memberships and all these different things and how they are trying to especially kind of differentiate themselves from timeshares because of the fact that timeshares can have a negative reputation. And so I've gone to a few sessions, done my own research. And so in this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about them and really kind of lay out, I guess, what you would want to consider before joining one. Now, with that being said, just based on the little bit of the research that I've done, and once again, maybe my own personal experiences being in some of these sessions, I've noticed that the people that tend to go for these options tend to be either much older. So maybe, I don't know, they just got all that money to spend, or they tend to be people who really like going to a particular property and a particular location time and time again. So those are the kind of people I've noticed that tend to do it. That's not to say that there's probably not others who would do it, but as I said, we'll get into some of the things to consider before you sign up for a timeshare membership or vacation club. So the first thing to consider, as I've already mentioned, there are some restrictions with timeshares in particular, and also maybe with some vacation clubs, right? So there are restrictions at times in terms of like when you can book. If they have blackout dates, that's something you want to consider, because are you super flexible on your own schedule whereby you can travel whenever you want to make it work? Or are you already dealing with limitations maybe from work life, personal life, whatever it is, that would already make it restrictive to travel? If that is the case, then signing up for a timeshare where on top of that they're adding their own restrictions might not be the ideal thing to do. You also, as part of the blackout dates, you also want to consider how much flexibility you do have in case you need to reschedule. And so if you're thinking already about scheduling and getting a date that's not a blackout date, what happens if you now need to reschedule, right? Sometimes it's easier to just maybe call up the hotel or the resort X amount, maybe what I think most places will probably give you 2 to 3 days before you arrive, where you may be able to make some adjustments. So you want to kind of think through that as well. Like if you are doing a timeshare, how flexible is it? Because if it is a shared unit, for example, and let's say that another group has it booked for the week after you might not be able to necessarily just easily push it if you still want the same unit that you're accustomed to getting. The second thing that I would actually do is plenty of research. One of the things that I noticed with some of the vacation clubs that were actually promoted to us is that the deals that they were offering were not that great, to be honest. You can find those deals on your own. Yes, you probably have to be a little bit flexible in terms of when you're trying to go, but some of these deals you can find on your own, especially now. I feel like, yes, post-COVID, more people are traveling, but you will still find some good travel deals from places that are trying to get people to either come and check them out, people to come back, you know, whatever it is. So there is a possibility that you may still find some good travel deals, even being outside of those memberships. And so you want to make sure that if you're signing up to be a member of something or have a timeshare, both of which can have stupid financial commitment, you need to make sure that it's going to be worth it in the long run. Whenever you're doing a timeshare, based on my understanding, whenever you're doing a vacation club membership, you still do have to pay to stay in whatever accommodation you're staying in, right? So it needs to make sense financially that the deals that they are providing for you are so significantly better than anything you'd be able to get on your own. Another thing to consider is that if you are signing up for like a membership, let's say with the Sandals properties, then that means that you have to be willing to know that you're only going to benefit from it if you're going to a place that has a Sandals. So if you are signed up to be a timeshare owner at a specific resort in like Puerto Rico, then fine, yes, when you go to Puerto Rico, you will always have that. But if you get tired of going to Puerto Rico, or maybe you're not feeling Puerto Rico in a given year, then you might not necessarily be able to transfer that to another location, unless that's how, of course, the program is set up. If the program is set up that way, where they have partnerships with other locations, then yes, in that way you can still make use of it. But you do want to keep in mind the sort of locations that these are offered in. If you are someone who generally your travel style is defined, you like leisure, you just do easy peasy, then you're probably more likely to have some options, versus if you're someone that you like easy peasy, you also like living like locals, you also like, you know, being out and about, doing a lot of adventure stuff. If you have a very varied travel style, I probably wouldn't recommend that you do one of these, just because you want to give yourself flexibility in terms of how you're staying and where you're staying. Another thing to consider, as I've said before, these prices for these timeshares, vacation clubs, they can be very, 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 very steep. Okay, y'all. I'm not talking about like $1,000. Like some of them can be like, I think some of them will probably start at minimum of $10,000, getting up to $100,000. And so, as I said before from the beginning, the people who I see that are willing to kind of do this are people who are either much older and maybe they just have a lot of spare money, or people who really like a particular destination. So you really have to know that you are ready to financially commit before you do this. Like that is essentially, to me, taking on a second mortgage, a second car payment, you know, just any sort of secondary bill that you otherwise would not have to take on. If you are someone that does not travel a lot, or you already don't necessarily maximize the use of wherever you stay when you do travel, I definitely would not recommend doing this unless you literally just have the money to blow it and nothing better to spend it on. The sign-up costs can be extremely, extremely steep, extremely steep. And I'm not quite sure for any of these programs as far as like getting out of the program, if there's any penalties, but that's something you also want to look into to see if they do have penalties, because that's also a financial implication if you decide that, you know what, I tried it, I didn't like it, it's not for me. So I would highly, highly recommend that you make sure your finances are in order before you sign up for one of these. When they meet with you and they try to present it to you, they will be super convincing. They'll, you know, crunch the numbers however they can, but it doesn't take away from the fact that these are extremely expensive undertakings that most people probably are not going out of their way looking for. So just be very mindful of that. I'm kind of the opinion that if you know that you're going to a specific property and you've been there before and you really like it, then maybe yes, at that point, it might be worth it for you to look into one of these programs. But do make sure that you have done your research, that you've read the fine print, and that you really understand what you're getting yourself into. Finally, the last thing you really do have to consider is the fine print, okay? You need to make sure you know exactly what you're getting yourself into. As I've mentioned, sometime with some of these timeshares or membership deals or whatever they are, there may be restrictions on when you can book. So you want to have it in, you want to have an idea of if there are those sort of restrictions, and then once again, if there's any penalties if you decide to cancel it early. It is really important that you read through it. One of the things that I've noticed with timeshare presentations, vacation club presentations, membership presentations, they tend to take a really long time to give the presentation, right? And I think that's to kind of wear you out. And then they try to rush the decision-making process, and I think that's to pressure you. And so most people probably are not reading fine print during that time. You know, they're thinking about all the stuff that they've already presented to them as perks, and then they're probably also thinking about the fact that they just want to hurry up and wrap it up and go. But you really need to pause, take your time, and make sure that you're actively reading through everything. If you don't understand something, read it through again. And even if after the fact you're still on the fence, I personally don't think there's anything wrong with leaving and then coming back to that same resort if you really like it, or that same property another time, and then seeing about signing up. For me, the last time that we did one of these sessions, I explicitly told the presenter that, you know, before I sign up for something like this, I actually would like to discuss this with a financial advisor. And for them, they felt that, well, this is for vacation. Why would you need to discuss that with your financial advisor? And yeah, you probably think that if you don't use a financial advisor. I'm not saying that you need a financial advisor to make every single decision of your life with you, but I strongly believe that if you're putting down thousands to tens of thousands of dollars, you really need to make sure that you understand what you're committing yourself to. Even if they present it as over the lifetime of it, maybe you would have paid $100,000, but you're only paying a couple $100 every month. You still need to make sure that you have a strong understanding of how that impacts your finances as a whole. So once again, just really make sure that you take your time. Don't feel pressured. Don't let them rush you. Really take your time and be willing to walk away if you're not 100% sold on it. If you are sold on it and you know it works for you and you know you have the funds, by all means go ahead, but please do not feel pressured into it. The truth is, I'm sure there's going to be even more things that are coming out or more options that are coming out to make these sort of packages and memberships and whatnot appealing to people. So always just be mindful when you're going on vacation or traveling anywhere or just getting any sort of these presentations. Just be mindful of what they're presenting to you and really how it fits your life and your budget. As always, please make sure to like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to my channel for more travel, career, and general living tips. See you next time.